Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Sean Carey, and I'm with.
Dr. Bill Moss.
And it's Monday night. We just got back from a big trip. We're really excited to be here. This is actually the first podcast we've recorded in about 3 weeks because of travel, I think. So it feels really good to be back.
Yeah,
How you doing,
it
Bill?
is. I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, it's always I don't know how you feel after a vacation or any type of trip. It's always like I feel like I have to take a deep breath before I reintegrate into my normal my normal life, and always like brace myself for what's it gonna look like. I don't know about you, but that's always how I feel a little bit.
Yeah, there's always that uncertainty after a big shift, right? Because you're like, okay, I'm going to be different in some way, but what does
Yeah,
that mean for my day-to-day life?
exactly. I even remember like as a kid feeling like if you went to like a camp and had a really great time and it was so outside of your normal everyday, you're like, oh man, I don't want this to come to an end. And though I don't exactly feel like that anymore, there is this like refreshing newness,
Yeah,
growth whenever we change our environment, that serves as a reminder, and in essence it can be like a healing, because I think that sometimes gives us this reflection on how different our life can be from our just day to
yeah.
day kind of grind, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fun, like, we just went to, the Modern Mystery School programs, which is like there's all sorts of classes and people come from around the world to do these programs, so they'll
Mhm,
stack class after class after class within a short period of time, because you literally have people
mhm,
coming from, like, South Africa and Brazil and Europe and Japan. So instead of
mhm.
having people come, like, twice a month for classes. Instead, there's maybe a 3 week, 2 or 3 week span that happens a couple times a year. So we got to see our
Yep.
friends from like around, literally around the world, friends from Japan and South Africa and throughout Europe and all these different
Yeah.
people, all these different like professions and. But you really get to see some interesting reflections because there are people who are just so different than who you might spend a lot of time with day to day.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep. Yeah. And the other thing that's interesting about when you come together with group periodically, like, with the way we train, it's pretty much quarterly. We even did a chiropractic seminar, you and I, back in the day. That was quarterly, right? That must be
Yeah,
our thing,
yeah,
where we need a recalibration every quarter. But when you see people regularly enough and intervals that provide a break, it's always fascinating to see the growth that others have, and then also like the reflection of your own self with others. So, I think it almost serves as a periodic benchmark to uh, have an understanding of how you're different, and how the perception of you can be very different. That's part of the healing journey. I know when
yeah,
I work with clients, I always, especially in the healing world, I always ask them to, or I tell them, pay attention to the things you do every day, because you'll see these different subtleties. But remember, like, the people that you interact with will respond to you differently when you start to change. It's like a result of change
yeah.
that, people respond to you. They show up differently. They comment about you differently, and we have that opportunity to kind of see where we are in a very different place from our day to day. And I always
Yeah.
appreciate that, like, to see. Sometimes you don't know how far you've actually come until you remove yourself from the day to day environment, um, and you put yourself into a new immersion, if you will.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I think sometimes people, it's like they want their life to change, they want their life to be different in some way, but
Hmm.
also people aren't always willing to step outside the box of of that day to day routine, of thinking the
Yeah,
same thoughts and being around the same people and reading the same things and
yeah,
you, there's not always enough change to really get somebody outside of their current state to a different state. And that's what we
hmm,
want to talk about this podcast, was really getting beyond the box of your current existence into a
Mhm.
different state, at least for a moment in time, so that you can
Mhm.
create a change in your reality and your world.
Yeah, 'cause it's kinda like in a metaphor, the box is you could say it's like your comfort zone, right? Where what
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
But beyond it, right? Beyond it is pushing into the world that we don't know. And I always like that concept of like what you don't know is beyond the limits of like your current understanding. And I
yeah,
think we still think like we understand our unknown, but like for something to be truly unknown, it's got to be in into a completely different place. And
yeah,
I think even something like programs every 3 months or it's you can very much also have this reflection of like, oh, I haven't changed. I'm still living in
yeah,
my
yeah,
same state. Because I think that happens to people too,
yeah,
where you show up. And I think we do this with friends and family members we haven't seen.
yeah,
Where like all of a sudden we're like, am I that different? Have I grown? Have I changed? Like we start asking those questions. Uh, and I think if you look around, most people kind of almost automatically bring you back into like, let me tell you about how my box has been since the
yes,
last time we spent time talking about my box.
yes. Because it's so
Right.
familiar and it's so habitual, and it's like, if you don't have enough of a impetus, if it's not, like, different enough, you just end up going back to the same place,
Yeah.
and
I even it's funny we say this. Like I have a person I work with from time to time, Chris Elwert, and I do like a check-in. She's in the school as well. And I do like a check-in every month to just help like redirect my thoughts, my direction, my energy.
yeah,
And it's been helpful for me over the years. Uh whenever I sit down to go into that conversation, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe how many new things I'm like
yeah,
ready to let her know about. Not, I mean, I think that's a good way to like kind of look at your own healing. Like, how many new things do you have to tell the
yeah,
people close around you about
yeah,
your growth and your progression and the new things you're learning? Um, because I definitely didn't know that I made so many leaps and bounds until I started kind of doing that.
yeah,
And you can otherwise just think you're in one spot, but you've actually progressed more than you've been led to believe, led yourself to believe, right?
yeah, and that's the best feeling. I had that experience this time where I had, I've lost maybe, like, 20 pounds or 25 pounds in the past, like,
Yeah.
6 months. And, like, when I was there, I saw all these friends I hadn't seen in 6 months, and, so many
Mm,
people were like, you look great, what are you doing?"
yeah.
But that probably happened, like, 15 times, so it was just such an affirmation because to me, I didn't feel like I looked that different because I've been looking at myself in the
Oh,
mirror
right.
every day. But
Yeah.
it, like, people hadn't seen you in 6 months. So that was
That's why you did
really
it,
cool.
right? That's why you
Yeah.
did it. You did it.
Yeah, just for the for the kudos there.
Yeah. I
But
hope it
yeah,
doesn't go the other way where people are like, man, my hair, you have less hair.
that's
That's
funny.
funny.
Yeah, but we don't always see that. We don't always see the shifts that we make, and
No, most of the time we don't. It's funny because my this week, this is funny. Like this, my whole family, my 4.5-year-old daughter, my wife, myself. The other night we were like, my daughter's really she's particular from time to time. Like,
yeah,
she just has a strong will, and she like when she decides yes or no, she's like, this is what I want to do. And she's not the most independent eater. Like, we have to like
yeah.
prompt a lot and like keep going and make sure she has enough. Cause then we'll get to bed and she'll be like, you'll be ready to fall asleep. And she'll be like, Daddy, I need food. And you're like, honey, oh, it's not dinner time anymore. It's
Yeah,
bedtime. Like we're laying down to go to sleep. So we started like implementing like a sticker chart. Like you try everything, you independently eat, and you take your plate up. We're gonna give some stickers, and at the end of those 30 stickers, you can get like a new toy. And it sparked excitement. But what Lauren and I decided to do was like, we should do a sticker chart for ourselves. Like this is exciting.
yeah,
So then we're all doing it as a family, and we put like disciplines we're going to do and then the goal that we're going to have. And this is
Uh-huh.
like day 2. Today is day 2. And I looked at Lauren tonight, and part of hers was like, she's going to really do every ritual that she has, and like a
Yeah.
lot of self-work. And she's like, I'm going to also exercise for 20 minutes. And I looked at her tonight, and my God, you look like really different. Like really, really,
Yeah.
like you're just
Yeah.
glowing. You look really, and I could tell she was like, you're not just saying this either, but
Yeah.
it's true. It's even in a small period of time, when we make these commitments to ourselves that revolve
Yeah.
around development and healing, like we show up different very quickly. And I
Yes.
live with her, right? And I noticed the difference in like 2 days. And genuinely, I'm like, wow, you just like look lighter and
Yeah.
brighter. And that's just a result of the sticker chart. Which
It's
is
amazing that
outside of the box. It's
yeah.
outside of the box. We've never
Yeah.
done that. So
That's so cool.
yeah. So if you want to join our sticker chart game.
I actually, you know what? I have on you can't see it from this angle, but I have like a new goal sheet that I like a new goal whiteboard that I put up in my office here. So, and I've
Okay.
been working on the like my monthly goals, and I just have them here in front of me every day, where I like didn't have them before, and I'd kind of like fallen off
Yeah.
track.
Yeah.
And that's been really helpful for me as like my sticker chart for right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's really kind of funny because like we've, I've done disciplines. I do them with
Yeah,
my team. Sometimes we'll do like 30-day disciplines where we're like, pick something you're gonna do for 30 days. And
yeah,
that's a challenge, right? But it pushes every and sometimes we're 100%. Sometimes we're really close to that. But I like this method because we're like doing it with my daughter, and it's all positive stuff. Like it's,
yeah,
you know, uh, growth behaviors and things we're not naturally good at. And then you can kind of set the level of the prize, right? Where you're like, and I think
mm,
my wife, like a more expensive thing she's going to do. She wants, I don't care, I'm gonna say it. She wants to get an electric bike that she can
cool.
use like at our campsite and to travel to the lake and everything. She's really wanted
Yeah,
it. She didn't want to really necessarily spend the money. And she's like, okay, if I do this commit, I'm gonna get myself this bike. And I was like, that's like a pretty, this is outside. This is like blowing
yeah,
up the box. I was like, that's a pretty expensive thing. That's like $1,000. And if I pick something that's $1,000, and you look at it for a year, that's like 24,000. That's like $25,000. She's like, yeah. Well, she goes, yes. But like, what are we going to accomplish if we like actually
yeah,
do this? Right. And
yeah.
stick to it. And that's kind of like the whole point, right? That's
Oh,
like
what a
the
beautiful way to
anatomy.
think about it.
Yeah, it's like I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's a lot of money." He's like, "Yeah, but think about all the things that we would have
Yeah,
accomplished and how our life will look different." And I'm like, "That is 100% true." And it's the piece that should drive us
yeah,
um, towards that. Like, wow, what a amazing life, and what a bit different place like we could all be by implementing this little thing. So, uh, it's nice to like do that stretch. And I think that's the point. Like whenever you do something new in your life, it provides this like space to actually see the room for growth, where like when
yeah,
I know when I'm in my day to day, I don't even feel it or sense it or experience it.
yeah.
um
I don't think people realize how much like how much we get stuck in routines as far as our
mhm.
even our emotions, our thoughts, like our day-to-day
Yeah,
groove. And it's we'll say we want our life to change, but if you don't get yourself out of that routine, out of that box, you're not
yeah,
likely to change. It's just you're kind of stacking the deck against yourself by just through your routine. And we really need those
yeah.
things to switch us up, whether it's like this coming through your daughter, like through this situation, which is amazing, or like an
That's true.
yeah, some external source, like there's some external spark that comes in and helps us like
Mm,
step out of our current state for long
yeah.
enough that a change happens, and then you can go back to like your life and start living it differently.
Yeah. And I think one of the most powerful parts of it that matters to me more that I recognized, it's because this is such like a simple thing, but there's so many aspects of it that are important. And one of the big parts that makes me more excited about this than other commitments is the fact that there's like this not just community, but this familial
Yeah.
community regarding surrounding what we're doing. And that's like a huge deal. We just we have had so many changes since like I got back in programs. We did this
Yeah.
core value activity where we were like got these core value cards and we're looking at it. And it's just like I feel and experience all these aspects of like the stretch, right?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
it's funny how a lot of times I think people look for the thing they're doing or the place they're going or the retreat or whatnot to do the thing and then it's done,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
where like coming back from this program, it's like the themes that I saw that were important and that put me, and maybe then I also had a desire. I'm starting to feel like really becoming woven in day to day, which
Yeah.
is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's all about taking that higher inspiration or the new thought and then grounding it into our physical reality. Because it's also like
Mhm.
if it just stays up here, it's this like really cool idea or experience you had, and that's where it stays. It doesn't really it
Mhm.
doesn't really change anything. And I
Yeah.
think you and I had some experiences like that with different chiropractic events in the past where there was like I love certain aspects of camaraderie, but there wasn't
Mhm.
always a change for me. Like it was like I enjoyed it, but I wasn't changing so much. It was more just
Mhm.
like me doing the same thing over again. And something that I love with the mystery school work is that you're really introducing an outside energy. You're introducing a higher
Yeah.
energetic frequency, so that it really just shakes things up in a positive way. It helps you to get out of your box. Like it gives you kind of a kick in the pants out of the
Yeah.
box. But then you have that
Yeah.
spark, and then if you learn how to really like ground it into your physical day to day life, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, and kind of what we were talking about earlier, I remember going to many of those chiropractic events or just even personal development, and you'd go in with like a lot of like excitement and be ready to change yourself in the world, and then I'd show up again and be like, yeah, I didn't do a lot different, and I kind of like I'm in the same place that I was before,
Yeah,
and like, I remember experienced that multiple times where I'm like, "Why? I feel like I started something new and it didn't stick." Where that's what was the difference for me with the energy work and the mysteries and everything was the fact that, like, it stayed with me. Some of
yeah,
it because I did the work, but some of it just because it felt like it got woven into me,
yeah,
like it was just then woven into the experience of myself, and for me, I was like, well, this has been like way more powerful than any seminar I did. And I remember when I was at the initiation and started really using all the tools that we learned at that Empower Thyself and initiation,
yeah,
I used them right away. I mean, I sure I took days off and experience, but that was like, but I was using them. And I remember having a friend who did Date with Destiny, like I think it was Date
yes,
with Destiny with Tony Robbins, like the 4-day, 5-day event. And about I think like 6 or 8 months later, I was after that event, I was like, how much of that are you still using? And we were having a genuine conversation about just our
yeah,
development. And he's like, I gotta be honest, I think I went back and maybe looked at some of my notes once and you kind of just go back to living the way you were. Not
yeah,
everybody, that's not true of everybody who's probably done those things. People make big shifts and they keep, and I was like, yeah, I'm that's been true for myself. But all of a sudden I'm like, I'm using these things and I keep making breakthroughs and having new realizations and I feel smarter, happier, more fulfilled, joyful. And I keep using these tools that continue to work for me. So for me, that was the biggest difference was I got blown up, excited, and then I
yeah,
deflate and kind of happen again. And need those things to have my juice. And now, I've missed a program in there. But I still feel like development continues because I have tools that continue to develop. But it's even bigger boost when you're always there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I had a similar experience, and it was like there when I first started doing all this stuff, like there was something that just felt really good to me, even though I couldn't quite put words on it. But I started seeing myself make these changes in my life that I had struggled to make. All of a sudden things just started, like I was shifting in some way that I wasn't even
Mm.
expecting myself to shift in. And it was through something to me that was like totally outside my box. Energy healing was not in my box at all. Like it was a very
No.
weird thing. Um, I wasn't I didn't intellectually like the idea either. Like, it wasn't like something like I was super open-minded. I was like, I saw our friend Nick, and he was just like shining, and I was like, "Oh, like you have a special shine to you. What do you do?" You went and did this thing. Okay, I want to do that so I could shine too. But it was almost like the fact that it was energetic healing was like an inconvenience to my mind and my ego.
That's a great
And
way. Yeah, a great way to put it. It's
yeah, it
really
didn't
cool.
match with my like self-image.
Yeah, I want
And
that, but I don't wanna do it that way, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, and, sure enough, like, do this experience, and then then I start changing in all these good ways and aspects of myself that I had struggled to make the shifts, and it was through
yeah.
something that was totally outside of my box, and now
Mhm.
I really relish these opportunities to go and put myself in these situations that are, like, way outside my comfort zone, even
Yeah.
sometimes with, like, with the energy of the different things that we're doing because
Mhm.
I know that internal growth can also be stimulated from an outside force. Like if you
Mhm.
get that right, like outside force that helps lift you up, and then
Yeah.
you ground and anchor it, you can really like take off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to put, internal change can come from an external force. 100%. Yeah. I definitely have seen all that and had the same experience. I was like, no, not
Yeah.
energy. Like I wanted all the things
Yeah.
that like a spiritual path, if you will, would support without having it be a way of development. Like,
Yeah.
and I definitely fought that a lot. Like
Yeah.
and I don't want to say I still fight it. I fight it much less.
Yeah. Yeah.
But really early on, I mean, we've talked about this before, but I only did it because I knew you, like some of
Yeah.
the energy work, and it's like, well, I really know Sean super well, and he's grounded, and he is happy, positive, joyful, and like is kind of passionate about this thing. So, like, let's give it a shot. And I saw the results of what was kind of communicated plus some, and other people made peculiar comments of me, and I was like, well,
Yeah.
there's something to that. And there just kind of kept being more than something about all of it. It's like, yeah, no, I'm a professional. Why would I do
Yeah.
energy healing? I'm a
Yeah.
doctor, I'm a chiropractor, I have all this schooling, and yet like this stuff can make transformation. Oh, I'm really smart, or it's got to be counseling that's going to be the way.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I'll try this thing. And it's wild because it goes beyond the mind. So when you're
Yeah.
talking beyond the box, like energy work works beyond the mind. It just you can't
Yeah.
explain all aspects of it. And that's like the
Yeah.
beauty of life. Like
Yeah.
there's so much magic in this world that goes beyond, and that's why we love these stories and we love people that have like experienced miracles that don't fit in that box because they expand our ability to really observe what we already know, and they stretch
Yeah.
us beyond that. So I think it's important. It provides a lot of hope for people, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely that hope that wasn't there before. And when we talk about our boxes too, it's like we're not very good at seeing our own boxes because it's like you're
No.
in such a state where you're living in it. So it's like
Yeah.
the benefits of the spiritual path is that you have people who've basically gone farther and they can introduce a higher levels of energy than you probably can. So it's just like that
Yeah.
spark that's kind of lighting up your inner worlds, your mind, your inner being, and you
Mhm.
don't know exactly what's happening, but you just feel something good's happening, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
maybe you start to like think a bit differently, or you just allow
Mhm.
these thoughts in that before were kind of blocked out. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, we have to get beyond our mind, and
Mm.
however you choose to do that as an individual. But like if you imagine somebody who's a runner, and they can just keep running and running and running, and there's probably a lot of different tweaks they can make to become better at running. But then if you
Mhm.
have that person, you put them in like martial arts, or you put them in, doing like powerlifting or something like that, they'll probably make all sorts of different gains really quickly, because it's like
Mm,
they've just, it's the rate of gains will happen so fast introducing that
yeah.
new activity. And it's just like
Yeah.
taking that person through through a different, out of their box that they were in. So if you're somebody who's been doing like personal development and you've been doing counseling or these different seminars, and then it's like you try something totally different, you can have mega
Mhm.
growth really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that. Like I was a runner, but you have this assimilation almost. Like you're like, oh, and I think it was the book. No, I can't. It was by Adam Grant. It was a recent book. I
Hmm.
think it was The Comfort Crisis. I might be getting this wrong, but he tells in there he talks about the concept of these people who learn a different language. And I don't think we talked about this. I know I told the story places because it's kind of wild, but they basically studied, I'm going to paraphrase this, but they basically studied people who learn multiple languages.
Yeah.
And what they found was there were people that would study one language for a very long time and not get it. But once they got that language, they could get other ones. And what they found was the biggest difference maker in learning a language was when you just got to the point where you knew you were going to look stupid and not be good, and you were going to the point where you were going to be bad, you were going to say offensive crap to people because you didn't pronounce it right, you didn't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when you got to that point, just like, I don't really care, this is what I'm going to do, you relearn the language, and then you knew that that's how it was going to be, so you just do it again for another language. So you were okay about
Yeah.
like being a total novice, and then you got good at being a total novice again, and you actually had an advantage by doing that. So it's kind of like, if you can apply that same level of like, well, I wasn't that good at this at one point,
Yeah.
and I learned the skill, got good. And I thought that was a wild concept, because how many of us went through like years of learning a language and it just work, and we didn't
Yeah.
go practice it, we didn't go into a community. But like that's why immersion worked so well. Like you get dropped off and you're like, well, I'm gonna learn Spanish. Well, I
Yeah.
better. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna look dumber living here not knowing
Yeah.
it.
Would it
so,
would it
so I might as well try until I got it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I thought that was a really fascinating take on the understanding of like learning and sucking.
Yeah, and just stepping outside that comfort zone, right? Because it's like none of us like to look stupid. Humiliation is like a bigger fear than death, right? Like public speaking is a bigger
Yeah.
fear than death.
Oh my God. I know. I know.
Yeah.
And that's like why we're doing this, right? And
Yeah.
actually maybe you find this, but like, okay, so we started this podcast, and it is this thing, you're like, oh man, I probably sound stupid and no one's gonna listen or whatnot. Like there's a million reasons why not to do it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you do it. But along the way, we've had these discussions like by doing this, which is totally outside the box. Anybody who's
Yeah.
ever started this, or even like tries to public speak, experiences this. But I'm finding levels of communication in my day to day being better, right? Because we decided
Yes.
to do
Yeah.
something like this. There's a
Yeah.
lot that comes with that new thing. So I think like probably the simplest way of describing getting beyond the box is like getting beyond your comfort zone. And
Yeah.
that's where the growth even is. And it's always most enjoyable to look back on the accomplishment after you
Yeah.
did it, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Especially when it was hard and it was awkward, and like that makes for a better story, you know? Like I remember I went and did this, started doing the life activation and initiation. I was like, it was so outside my comfort zone, but I was like, worst case scenario, I'll get a really good story. And I've spent $250 on worse things before. So it's like, I'll have a really good story for, $250 if this goes wrong.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that was my attitude. And then I did it and I was like, wow, this was something really good happened. I don't know what. And it was totally beyond my comfort zone.
Mm, mm. Yeah, that's a good, yeah. And even along the way, it's like I still find this. Now I start to look for it, right?
Yeah.
Because I've definitely hit points where I'm like, oh my God, I'm way seeking too much comfort in my life
Yeah.
again.
Yep.
And I think that's why came down to like sticker chart this time. Is
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
oh no, I really want to go back. And I think that's part of the realization. It's not like, and I think when I say that, it's that I want to go back to my life's no good. It's like, I want to go beyond it. I want
Yeah.
to continue to accelerate, where I have a greater understanding of self, and even what I've been experiencing over the last couple months. Like I want more of that. And I believe that it's like, let's anchor that in with some uncomfortability to go to the next level. So we're not just going back down to that. And I think that's kind of what's happening. But it's happening in a way that I like.
Yeah.
So it's not easy, but I like it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it can be an enjoyable process too. It doesn't have to be like this misery to get outside our comfort zone and our boxes. Because we
No.
don't really realize oftentimes of how miserable our boxes are until you leave that state. So it's like the comfort zone just feels like it feels comfortable, but you're also dying a little
Yeah.
bit every day that you're staying in that same spot. And the
Yeah.
reality is there's probably all sorts of things. If you got to choose, if you had infinite choice, you'd make it very different. But so
Mm,
instead, we don't venture out. We just stay in that spot. And you need
yeah.
some type of spark or inspiration or outside force to hopefully get you to take that leap outside of that box.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And, I think it's like if we're talking about healing, we're healers,
Yeah,
and people want to also overcome, even if that's just health conditions. It's usually the things you're not comfortable with that probably have some of the answers that you're looking for in
yeah,
ways. And I love the stories. You may have heard of them, like where people go and they're like, I'm gonna go hike the Appalachian Trail, right? That's like
yeah,
they're gonna do it. And that pulls them out of such a normal everyday life. And they're
yeah,
eating to survive and have energy, and they're sleeping in nature, and they're having little things and little technology, and their rheumatoid arthritis is gone, and their,
yeah,
health conditions that they've been struggling with just go away. And it's like, well, what was the
yeah,
cure? And it's like, not, there wasn't one thing. It was like they adopted a whole new way of
yeah,
living, for months. And that's like where you change everything. And that's like kind of the truth. It's not going to be just one thing. It's
yeah,
going to be, the culmination of little things that all kind of move out of the place that you are, because we all see it. It's
yeah,
probably easier to see in someone else, right? Like you've probably done with me multiple times, and you're like, Bill doesn't even know that he's like reliving his shit, because it's so easy to see other
yeah,
people and
yeah,
what they're doing, and it usually upsets us like a lot. Like we're like, oh, that person will like never change, and it's mainly probably because we're stuck.
yes, yes, yes.
So,
Yeah.
man,
Yeah, that's really well said, especially when we look at those health issues, like whether it's mental, emotional, or physical. The vast majority of people that I see, what they're struggling with is chronic. It's much more
yeah,
rare that that person just had a car accident, 2 weeks ago and has a new problem. It's much more that they've
yeah,
had these issues that were compounding over years, whether it's physically or whether it's mentally or emotionally. And that's like those
hmm,
boxes that we've been living in created that set of problems, and we got to get ourselves out of that box somehow.
yeah, absolutely. What, to wrap it up, what advice, like, what do you think's the most important piece of somebody in a healing journey, like right now? And like maybe first part is like assessing, what is the box, and how to kind of move out of it, like first steps to moving out of it, your experience of what, when you've seen yourself.
I think we have to firstly just very realistically accept that we aren't the best judges of our own boxes. Like
Mm,
we're just it's like as doctors we're our worst doctors too. Like typically because it's just like your mind doesn't work the same when you're trying to evaluate yourself. You have your blind spots and you don't realize that the blind spots are there.
mm, yeah.
So it's like something that can be really good is just getting yourself completely outside your comfort zone. So it's like doing
Hmm.
a trip you normally wouldn't do, doing a sport you wouldn't normally do something you wouldn't normally do, put yourself in that different setting. and then you'll
Mhm.
you'll be able to see of like, oh, I have this hiccup here, I have this hesitation here, or I actually really like this thing that I didn't even think I liked.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. What
That
would you
is
say?
good. Like, yeah, I think you need some kind of benchmark check-ins along the way. Like if there's
Yeah.
not a person or a date or a place that you can kind of not, even just like, have you ever done this? Like you go on a trip and you do it, like if you have a family spot that you go each year, it's like when you go to that spot, you actually can see like, oh, and remember how you were on
Yeah.
that in that place or on that vacation the year before, and you can also remember the surroundings and look at them. So I think, having like a periodic benchmark in to check in along the way is important. That's like why we do reassessments, right, in
Yeah.
chiropractic, because like they're these
Yeah.
benchmark check-ins that are outside of the day to day to look and reflect at where you've been. So I think that's first thing is, do you have that in place and in a simple way that allows
Yeah.
you to have these reflection points? See, where you are compared to where you were. And that's, everybody does light activation, which is their first healing session. The thing I encourage them to do, encourage them to
Yeah.
do, and even have some like automatic emails that go is like, oh, look at your life a week later, a month
Yeah.
later, 3 months later, 1 year, and then say like, where was I like there, and
Yeah.
now where am I? Because
Yeah.
that's a much different story than, well, I had this session yesterday and then I showed up Monday and it's not different. And it's like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
um, and so many other people's aren't different either. But then when you look in the totality of the jumps, when I look back on that first year, it was like mind blowing
Yeah.
how I went from like my own practice to teaching around the world, to helping establish a practice in another country, to almost
Yeah.
losing my marriage and regaining it and taking control of like figuring out how to get pregnant after 13 years of marriage, like all in
Yeah.
1 year. Like up to that point, like
Yeah.
where was the progress? Well, in those areas I hadn't really gone anywhere different over
Yeah.
time. So it's like having that reflection is often gives us the ability to pray, give gratitude for the
Yeah.
progress that we've ultimately made.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the most important parts when starting something.
I think that's a great way to wrap up.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this was a fun topic.
It
We come
was,
up with these and we're like, I don't know what it's going to be like, but I think
yeah.
that's just like a cornerstone piece of the journey, and
Yeah.
maybe share, either if you're watching this video, comment like, are you in the box? What are you doing to get in the box? And if you ever want to connect with us, you can in the links in our description. We're always curious what topics you want to hear, and also just connect with the people that are listening to us. So we're excited to um, explore on this podcast. We look forward to exploring where the box is going to be in
Yeah.
the next episode, in a year, in 2 years, and see where this thing goes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode, and it's only going to get better from here.